Dan Perry joins us now. He is an Israeli affairs analyst and the former regional editor of the Associated Press in the Middle East. He joins us from Tel Aviv. Thanks very much for being with us once again, Dan. As we've been talking about over the last few hours, Israeli forces have carried out another series of overnight raids across the occupied West Bank. There's been growing settler attacks as well. What's your take on all of this?
Look, both things are true. When Israel says that it faces a significant danger from concentrations of militants in West Bank, in particular in Jenin, but in other places as well, militants that belong to Islamic Jihad and Hamas, that's not a lie. It's not an invention. If they weren't carrying out these raids, then there would be more free action by those groups, and there would probably be attempts to attack not only settlers, but across the border into Israel itself. That much is true. On the other hand, it's also true that the situation in West Bank is completely inadmissible, where you have 500,000 Israeli citizens, these settlers that have full rights as Israeli citizens, and 2.5 million Palestinians who largely are without the rights of citizens in a democratic country. And when you have these fracases between settlers and Palestinians, it's always a question of deciphering who did what first. And in this case, the settlers claim that the Palestinians attacked them with rocks, and the Palestinians claim they were defending themselves against a settler attack. And it's difficult to really figure out who exactly is correct.
We've been talking also about the Oscar-winning Palestinian filmmaker Hamdan Bilal, who was detained by the Israeli army. I mean, that must be a concern now because for many in Israel, because it's actually shining the light on what Israel's forces as well as settlers are doing in the occupied West Bank, because this is a story, because of his profile, that is going around the world now.
I agree. I mean, it's not the smartest thing in the world to arrest a celebrity under these circumstances, and it's very sad to see. I was about to say the Israeli government has handed a lot of control over what happens in the West Bank to politicians who represent the extremist settler movement, and the results in the field are clearly an emboldening of radical settlers who are no strangers to attacks on the Palestinians, to attacking their olive trees, to rampaging through their villages. There have been some cases of fatalities. Again, it would be naive to claim that in no case are these retaliations against Palestinian attacks. The bottom line, if we zoom out just a little bit, is that the situation in the West Bank is a tinderbox that will lead to nothing good until an agreement is somehow devised to create either a true coexistence or a plausible separation between the two groups.
OK, we'll have to leave it there. But thank you so much, Dan. Dan Perry for us there out of Tel Aviv. Israel's parliament has approved the 2025 state budget, a move that would save the Benjamin Netanyahu government from collapsing. Now, the budget aims to increase defence spending while fears grow for the safety of the remaining 59 Israeli captives that are held in Gaza. Opposition lawmakers have criticised the bill, saying billions are being stolen from the people. Hundreds of protesters rallied in West Jerusalem in an attempt to block the vote. Dan Perry joins us now. He is an Israeli affairs analyst and the former regional editor of the Associated Press in the Middle East. He joins us from Tel Aviv. Thanks very much for being with us once again, Dan. First of all, how big a win is this for Benjamin Netanyahu?
Oh, it's enormous, because the government would have fallen if the budget had not passed by March 31st. And there was some concern on the part of Netanyahu and his supporters that it wouldn't, because he failed to give the Haredi parties what they were demanding, which is a law formalizing their draft evasion. And remember, Haredim in Israel are currently a sixth of the population, doubling as a proportion every generation. So this is not sustainable. But he bought their acquiescence, basically, by throwing billions of shekels at them. Just as one example, the salaries of state workers by the hundreds of thousands across the country are being slashed. The teachers in Haredi schools just got a raise. So, yes, there's a lot of anger in that part of Israel. I believe the majority of the population that wants this government to go, because it just passed an important hurdle, will survive for months, if not to the end of its term, which will come towards the end of 2026.
I said before, opposition lawmakers have criticised this, saying billions are being stolen from the people. For people outside of Israel, can you just explain what that means?
Basically, at least 5 billion shekels have been earmarked for the ultra-Orthodox Haredi parties, largely to enable their educational system, where boys, for example, don't study math, English, and science. and given their constant growth in the population, this will devastate Israel's modern economy and its ability to continue to be the so-called startup nation. Also, huge amounts of money are directed towards the settlements and the groups that support the settlements, the so-called national religious parties and their supporters. So essentially, Netanyahu is buying the continued support of these groups of the population that have different agendas, that are minority agendas in Israel. In the case of the latter, the settler supporters, they want to occupy Gaza forever and settle it with Jews, which has an impact, obviously, on policy towards the war.
Yeah, the Israeli president, Isaac Herzog, has said he is shocked the captives are no longer a priority. What's been the reaction from that, especially because it is coming from the Israeli president?
Oh, absolutely. Look, the Israeli president comes from the non-Netanyahu part of Israel. He's a former head of the Labor Party, and he speaks for what I believe are about 70 to 75% of the population that oppose the resumption of the war and consider it essentially to be tantamount to sacrificing the lives of the remaining dozens, scores of hostages that may still be alive in Gaza. So there is great opposition to this, but the fact is Netanyahu essentially, as I say, has bought the support of 64, 68 members of Knesset. That's a majority, and he goes against public opinion. And that will become increasingly unsustainable as the election approaches. But I'm sure he has various other machinations planned to address that issue. I think it needs to be understood that he is trying right now with his various moves against the Shin Bet head, against the Attorney General, to try to engineer a situation in Israel analogous to what you have in Turkey, where the president has absolute powers and there was nothing preventing him from arresting his main political rival this week. I'm sure Netanyahu looked upon that with some envy.
Okay, thank you so much, Dan. That's Dan Perry for us out of Tel Aviv.
Pleasure, Tom.